G'day guys, ZiggyD here, back with another look at the upcoming Path of Exile 3.4 Delve expansion. Moving away from Poison Pathfinder, which I covered in my last two videos, today I want to take a look at a new playstyle that's evolving in Delve, the Warrior Summoner. I haven't really figured out a good name for this playstyle yet. Melee Minion Man, Holy Crusader, something like that. But themed after the Templar, this is a warrior that leads their minions into battle and isn't afraid to get their own hands dirty. A traditional summoner focuses more on buffing minions and casting supporting spells. This playstyle instead uses attacks to deal damage and buff or create minions to back them up in combat. And there is a ton of support coming for this playstyle in 3.4. Let's go over some of that, starting with the Templar early game. So let's kick things off with the new melee skill Smite, and this might actually be my favourite skill of the expansion I've tried so far. You strike with your main hand weapon, and a bolt of lightning creates an AoE explosion targeting a nearby enemy or the ground near your attack. Make sure to do the Tidal Island quest because Ancestral Call support is a great choice for this. It'll create multiple explosions and give a lot of reach and area coverage. Whenever you hit an enemy with Smite, it also gives you and nearby allies, including your minions, a flat added lightning damage buff and additional chance to shock for a few seconds. It's a pretty good damage buff too, more than you get from Herald of Thunder, at least at the levels I've tested so far. This skill feels really good, it's nice and crunchy, and because it has that built-in area splash, I didn't feel like I needed to use the melee splash support with it as well. And it really amps up your minions, which gives a ton of damage for boss killing. Smite's a very strong early game choice for melee characters, and I think it'll see use in minion builds and party play, but it also seems strong enough for solo use as well. The next skill you get pretty early on is the new Holy Relic, and it is adorable. This friendly little floating candelabra sticks close to you, and whenever you attack an enemy, it pulses enthusiastically, like a little buddy cheering you on. These pulses deal physical damage to nearby enemies, but most importantly provides any allies, including you, with a solid life regen buff for a few seconds. This life regen is heavily amplified on minions, and this has a really major impact on the idea of leveling as this warrior summoner playstyle. If you've ever tried to play a summoner for leveling before, you'll know that it's not really worth running zombies or specters early on because they just die all the time. Pretty much only summon raging spirits, those temporary sort of minion skills, have been reliable from low levels in the past. Holy Relic, however, does an excellent job of keeping your zombies and other minions alive, making this playstyle much more viable right from low levels. And with the additional damage you're feeding your minions with Smite, a bit of a build starts to take shape a lot earlier than usual. I haven't yet tried supporting the Relic to do any real damage, but the possibility is there, and ZiggyD did reveal a Fated Joffrey's crest that adds a second Relic for this purpose. So running a setup with Smite, Zombies, and Holy Relic, I was easily taken through Act 1, and in Act 2 I got to pick up the new Herald of Purity. This new skill provides a flat physical damage buff to your attacks and spells, which is pretty significant as far as Herald buffs go, and it should be particularly juicy for any Facebreaker builds, which Smite also works with, by the way. Continuing with the Warrior Summoner theme, Herald of Purity also summons a Sentinel of Purity minion whenever you get a kill. These guys use a single target melee attack and an area slam attack. To make this much more useful, Herald of Purity also has a 20% chance to summon a Sentinel when you hit a unique enemy, so it actually has use on bosses as well. And furthermore, if a Sentinel would be summoned and you are already at the limit of Sentinels, then an existing one is instead healed and has their duration refreshed, which gets around that problem where you might resummon them before they get a chance to really do anything. So at this point, you have your zombies guarding you and beating down any tougher targets, several extra sentinels getting into the fight, the Holy Relic pulsing away, adding some damage and healing you and your minions up, and Smite smashing down enemies while buffing your full army with lightning damage. It's a very well-rounded and fun-feeling setup for so early in the game. I also highly recommend keeping an eye out for the Vile Summon Skeleton skill, which is going to be perfect in this build. This skill summons an army of skeletons perfect for killing bosses, especially since your Smite will add lightning damage to every skeleton. So at this point, let's take a look at some of the additional support that's been added via the passive skill tree for this playstyle. Right from the start, you can see that this new meta is supported by hybrid minion damage and regular damage nodes in the Templar start, so these buff you and your minions' attacks. Then a few points to the north, the minion nodes have gotten a whole lot juicier than they were in the past. Spiritual Command has a solid suite of buffs, but most notably, it makes it so that increases and reductions to minion attack speed also affect you. all of a sudden, any minion attack speed has 100% synergy with your melee attack playstyle. Just to the left of this node, there is a bunch of minion resistance and life regen, which is pretty vital for keeping your minions alive through some of the more nasty encounters. When you'd rather be attacking, you don't really want to have to be resummoning your minions all the time, of course. And then over to the far left, we have an all-new minion wheel with some rather substantial nodes in it. Spiritual Aid in particular makes it so that increases and reductions to minion damage also affect you. So now any minion damage nodes and minion attack speed nodes, if you picked up that other one, have 100% synergy with your own combat scaling. This simply means that you can focus on minion scaling through passives and duels and things, and you'll still get the full benefit of those as long as they're damage or attack speed. There's a bunch more changes going on to the tree, and the passive skill tree has been released right now, so you can go ahead and download Path of Building and take a look at that. But overall, in addition to minions getting a lot more options in the tree, there is now strong support for this new warrior summoner playstyle. So right now, some of you long-time Path of Exile veterans might be thinking, isn't there a perfect skill for this playstyle? One that requires you to attack to summon minions? And you'd be right, Dominating Blow is back after years in a sad, sad limbo. Some of you may not even remember the skill if you've joined the game more recently, but it's back and it's been reworked. Dominating Blow applies a debuff to an enemy for a short duration. Then, when the debuffed enemy dies, its corpse is consumed and it rises once again as a Sentinel of Dominance. The Sentinel summoned is dependent on the rarity of the enemy slain. You can have 9 normal Sentinels of Dominance, 3 magic, and 1 rare. Similarly to Herald of Purity, you also have a 10% chance to summon a Sentinel of Dominance when you attack a unique enemy, so the skill is actually useful in boss fights. So some of you may be disappointed by this change if you played Dominating Blow in the past, because it used to summon an actual copy of each enemy slain. But unfortunately, it flat out didn't work in many cases, and a lot of consistency is gained from the minions always being the same. Not to mention the skill is finally usable again. And thankfully, some of that original flavor of Dominating Blow is retained. Whenever you dominate a rare with an aura, the rare Sentinel will also have that aura. Haste, substantial extra physical damage, and even allies cannot die auras are all able to be bent to your will. So you'll probably want to grab some skill effect duration scaling and as much minion speed as possible, as well as being quite fast yourself if you choose to go the Dominating Blow route. It'll take a little bit of investment, but I can see it being quite fun if you want to have a ton of minions while still being in the thick of combat. And I imagine it'll be a bit like animated weapon builds if you've ever seen those, where if you dominate a ton of enemies and then take them to a boss, you'll just instantly shred them. Finally, let's take a look at the support that the actual Guardian Ascendancy is going to bring to the table for this playstyle. Firstly, the Prayer of Glory node is gone. Bam bow. It's been culled to make way for 2 new notables, starting with Radiant Crusade. This node provides damage to you and your allies affected by your auras, gives you 10% more damage if you have a friend nearby, including minions, and then 2 buffs specifically for Herald of Purity. Herald of Purity gets 40% increased buff effect, a solid chunk of extra physical damage, and the summoned Sentinels of Purity gain 50% increased area of effect. This affects their slam attack but also synergizes with the next node, Unwavering Crusade, which gives them the new Crusade Slam skill. In addition to that, you'll get 10% increased area of effect for each summoned Sentinel of Purity, which will help with aura radius and any AoE melee attacks you might be using. In addition to that, the node also gives extra accuracy for minions, a ton of it, and it causes your minions to intimidate enemies on hit, which causes those enemies to take 10% increased damage from all sources, which is a pretty sizable debuff. And finally, if you've hit an enemy recently, you and nearby allies regen 3% life per second. There's a lot to digest here. A lot of support for your Herald of Purity and bonus rewards for using it, buffs for minions and yourself, and still supported synergy for human allies under the Guardian Ascendancy as well. So it seems like there's a lot of directions you can go within this gameplay theme of Templar Warrior Summoner thing. For example, you might go Smite with minions and elemental scaling, you might go for a support focus with minions for damage, you might go Dominating Blow with a huge army and plenty of buffs for those many numerous minions that are scurrying around. And I've not even covered all of the skills that can be used here. There's a couple other melee skills that could fit the gap, and you've even got potentially things like Null's Inclination for this playstyle. Because of the huge list of possibilities here, this will likely be what I'm going to be personally exploring for Delve, and hopefully I've given you guys some inspiration for what you might like to try yourselves. If you guys have enjoyed this content and want to catch more Delve coverage in the future, then ensure that you smite that heathen sub button. That's it for now. I'm ZiggyD. Thanks for watching.